That helps. Yeah. The time now is 1:35. I call to order the meeting of the Orange County Sewer District #1 Advisory Committee of the Orange County Legislature. Please note this meeting is being transmitted live via video stream. The public can find the link to the video stream by visiting the Orange County website, www.orangecountygov.com, clicking on the tab for the legislature and locating the meeting down on the legislative section. Please silence your cell phones, tablets, and other electronic devices. And be mindful that the microphones here in the statutory committee room are sensitive and robust. This time, if you could please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Kelly, can you do a roll call, please?
Ema, Benelli,
Present.
Cheney,
Here.
Keller,
Present.
Hotel, Joey,
Present.
or present, sorry.
Okay, first and only up, really, we have Rich Golden, County Attorney. I'm not sure if he should make, I see Joe Mahoney has joined us, Senior Assistant County Attorney. We also have Bob Gray, Deputy Commissioner EF&S, Anthony Griffin, Principal Sanitary Engineer, Mary Beth Bianconi, Partner Delaware Engineering, DPC, and also Brock.
Correct. Jusela.
Brock, what's the last name? Jusela. And,
Tracy Letter.
oh, Tracy Letters, okay. We had you on a couple others before, so we glad you could make it. All right, with that, if you guys would like to come up, the first item is a timeline progress update for longevity and expansion. I know that you've had some deadlines for things to get to the DEC, so hopefully everything's moving along, and Mary Beth, you could fill us in on that and where we stand.
Sure. So good afternoon, everyone. We're happy to be here, and we're sort of here in full complement today, which is kind of nice, so we can talk about a variety of different topics. As the chairman said, we have a number of different items going on. Some coordination with the DEC that we've been working on. We have some technical evaluations that we've been working on for the facility plan and the draft environmental impact statement. And we have work that we've been doing on the variance application for the notice of incomplete application. So today, I'll give you a brief update on where we are with DEC. And then I think it will make sense. Tracy, as we discussed at our last meeting, Tracy's going to go over the demand projections that we've done for future sewer demands within the communities that are served by the Harriman Wastewater Treatment Plant. And then Brock is going to talk about the technical aspects of the project and some phasing in terms of, build some things and then build some more things, and how that matches up with the demand analysis that Tracy is going to present. So
Should we pass this up first?
well, quickly, let me do the DEC update and then we will jump on that. So in terms of DEC, we had submitted a quality assurance project plan for acquiring sampling information for the notice of incomplete application. That's been pending before the DEC now for about 4 weeks. We have heard from them that technical staff did conduct a review of that and provided their input back to the regional water engineer and the staff at the main office. And they are currently reviewing the quality assurance project plan, and we expect to have comments from them very soon. I did call them today to try to get an update, but they were not able to get back to me before this meeting. As soon as we have any information on that, we'll certainly let everyone know. So with that, I think Tracy's gonna talk a little bit about demand analysis. There's extra. Okay, there's, okay.
Okay, what we had done is send out a request for information letter to all of the users and outside users for the Harriman Wastewater Treatment Plant. Within that letter from Orange County, we had provided a form sort of way in order to try to get data back into one standardized manner so that it would be easier to compare. We got more information back from some of them, I'll just call them municipalities, than we did others, and some of them we did not really get any response at all. So if you look at just looking at this table as it is, the bolded numbers are numbers where we did get a response from the municipality saying this is our estimate for whatever year they responded to. The spots that are in italics, we didn't have an estimate or a projection from the municipality itself from what they had in the planning pipeline. So we used the basic census data from 2015, 2000, estimates, and then the year 2020 census. Looked at what that change was for 5 years and 10 years and projected that out as if it continued for that population change. Then because the numbers given here were mostly in Orange County units for sewer use, I had to convert them into households as a unit of the equivalent dwelling units based on the census data for each municipality as per its population and how many people were in each household. What's the average household? So then I came up with an estimate of what the number of units would be projected into the future instead of the population projected into the future. At the bottom, everything is added up as if it was units and then converted into gallons. So the final line down there is cumulative gallons. That's if you add the 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 20 years, you're looking at 6.3 million gallons per day as a projection of what's coming, future demand.
Now, I see you have the village of Curious Joel. I don't see the town of Palm Tree. I know that it's interrelated somehow, but
Yeah.
That
They're coterminous, so I'm taking it to mean that that's what they were.
So they're talking about.
Right,
what
because
was
those,
that?
The boundaries are the same.
the boundaries. are the
Boundaries are
same.
the same, I know.
Right.
And,
So the data that you see here, because it's bold, that's the information that was provided to us. So our understanding is that those values are for the coterminous village and town, so that they represent both.
Okay.
That's our understanding. We can certainly reach back out to them and verify that. but
Yeah,
that's
they
our
have
understanding.
pretty good, well-developed looking, lots of data for each of these timeframes. And just to note under the column headed type, some of, like the Village of Harriman gave me residential, commercial, and industrial. The Village of Chester did not. They just gave one lump. Village of Woodbury tabulated a number of projects for each different time frame and said residential or commercial and gave me the estimated number of units. Not for the last time frame though. And Curious Joel had a number of different project types, commercial, residential, industrial, within their maps, and they have a number of projects there, so I couldn't really try to fit them on this table with all, but when it says varied as tabulated, that means I received a lot more information than this, and I stuck it into this table.
Correct. And then for the communities that didn't provide commercial or industrial data, we did not make an assessment there because we didn't really have a legitimate way to determine what those values might be. So essentially what we see is that in the next 10-year time horizon, we're looking at about 3 million gallons in demand. In the next 20-year time horizon, we're looking at a cumulative, 6+ million gallons in demand. So we've been
for
talking
the whole district,
for the whole service area.
the service area.
Yes,
Is that an increase in the existing or is that total?
that's
That's
increased
just the
over.
increase in the
Right.
existing.
And what's the existing, as we stand today?
So right now, so you have a 6 MGD facility, your average day is 5.5,
5.
great. So you're essentially maxed out in your existing facility.
Yeah.
So this shows you that in the next 20 years, you need to duplicate your existing facility, essentially. You have a-
Three's not gonna cut it.
3 will get you, and again, these are projections, right? So
Yeah, fine.
3 appears to get you,
5 to 10.
10 years, something like that, 10 depending. And then, that next increment appears to be another 3 and change. And interestingly, that's what we've been talking about all along, right? We've been talking about taking the Harriman treatment plant from a 6 MGD plant that it is today, making it a 9 MGD plant in the short term, and then looking at how would you make it larger to, again, respond to this increase in demand. Again, we have this challenge, right? The planner's term for it is concurrence. How do you make sure that you have the capacity available when it's needed without overburdening the user of today for a capacity that might be used 20 years from now? Because, and Brock can go into this more in detail, the thing that you build today is going to work really well for its capacity that you intend it for today. The further out in time it goes, the less efficient it becomes because of wear, because there's changes in regulatory things, because for a variety of different reasons. So that's one of the reasons Brock is going to talk a little bit about phasing the incremental increase. And then the other thing is obviously cost, and who's bearing the cost of building all this capacity, because we all think of it, I think, in terms of the capital dollars, because that's the thing we can all easily point to and say, oh, it's X millions of dollars to build something that gets you Y capacity. But there's also, as we build a plant that's larger, even if we have a 6 MGD flow today and we build a 9 MGD plant, and there's going to be some period of time maybe when that new capacity isn't being used per se, because it's going to take a little while, right? There's still additional operation and maintenance costs just simply to having a larger facility be available to you. So when we think about size, timeframes, implementation, it's important to keep in mind that as we think about building a larger facility, even if no one's using this additional capacity, there's simply a cost to having it available to you that is beyond paying back the bonded debt.
I thought this might have looked higher. I thought it would have been higher. Is there any kind of, this is estimated.
Right.
Um,
So a couple of
total
trends.
units,
I'm sorry.
the total units is for 15 to 20, how much is that? 40?
It's 4,120.3 units.
Units
A unit equals 400 gallons
per day.
per day.
And is this cumulative on top? So like,
The line on the
let's say
bottom,
we have 40, okay, yeah.
the line on the
okay,
bottom
here
is
we go.
cumulative, the other two are just simply summing the column above them.
Right. So,
It seems to go down the further out we go, right? If it's 1,892,810,
right,
0 to 5, and then we go 5 to 10, it's down by 400 something thousand.
correct.
Then it bounces up another 5, and then it's up another 2.
So if you look at the line for Curious Joel,
Yeah,
it follows that. So you'll see that in 0 to 5 years, they're predicting almost 3,000 units. In 5 to 10, they've got a substantial drop in the number of units to just about 2,000. So it's 1,000 change. So it's really tracking their intended or anticipated growth pattern.
It's just within that 5-year timeframe.
it's just so it is. So then you would take it and add it on to the
Previous.
previous.
Yes.
Okay.
But Town of Monroe and Village of Monroe seem to have a rather strange
Yes,
growth.
the
Why?
town of Monroe had a little bit of difficulty with because the town of Palm Creek was created in 2019. So you've got this huge negative percentage of growth for the town of Monroe for the the year 2010 to 2020. To get around that, I estimated at the average of the other towns' growth rates for that year and stuck that into the town of Monroe. So that's a data anomaly due to the circumstances of, in the real world.
Right.
Also, there's two different, and our planner, Helen worked on this. There's two separate growth rates. There's the 5-year growth rate and a 10-year growth rate. So some of those jumps may just be related to how far out you're looking and projecting. And again, they're projections. And this is assuming that things are going to continue as they are in each of these municipalities, which may or may not be reality.
You may have explained it and I missed it, but how does this growth rate relate to development build out within the communities?
This is based on, for the bolded numbers, it's based on what they are,
But they
have in their planning line.
Hopefully.
And some of that is redevelopment, some of that's new.
Okay.
It's probably not reflecting all of the redevelopment of old
Probably not.
buildings to, being redeveloped for another use or for more housing or things like that, because it's not in the same pipeline.
One of the things that was interesting, we looked at the census data, is that for some communities where there may not be, you may remember a long time ago, we talked about, should we be looking at building permits or other, like what metrics should we be looking at to try to aid in this type of analysis? And back then we did pull building permit information for some of the communities. And what we saw was some interesting trends. So you have some places like, say, maybe Harriman or the village of Monroe, which, by many respects, you drive through those communities, you'd say they're pretty built out, right? There's pretty built out. And when we look at building permits, we don't see a tremendous number of building permits, meaning people are building like decks and stuff like that, but not like
Right.
I'm building 50 houses, right? We're not seeing that type of trend. However, in Harriman, Tracy, correct me if I'm wrong, but the percent change in population was something like 10 point something percent. So we did not have a change in the number of built housing units, but we had an increase in population. And what that related to was increase in the population density. The number of people living in each home went up. It went from 2.3 or something to 4 point something.
Yeah.
So we didn't build a lot of new stuff. We put more people there. More people equals more flow to the wastewater treatment plant. So some of these we're trying to account for those trends. The other thing that we decided to do was, there's a million different ways that you can look at this. You can go down a lot of rabbit holes. There's a lot of data that you can crunch. It is very, very difficult for us to predict out long distances because there's so many factors that are out of our control. People can change their zoning. So the land boundary of a village, Harriman, Monroe, may be fixed. But someone could decide that the current zoning allows you to go up 3 stories, maybe you should go up 7. That would give you an enormous increase in population density without really changing the geography. So those things are really hard for us to predict. So what we did was we kind of used the planner's traditional tool, which is to go back and look at census data, try to develop a trend. Right now, if folks are familiar with the way the census is done, there's something called the American Community Survey, which gives you 5-year population estimates that go in between the decennial census. When you compare those 5 years to the actual 10-year, they're very different. And it's because it's statistics, right? So we tried to kind of do the happy medium with this analysis. Could it be different? Absolutely. It's really tough to say in this environment. It's really tough to say.
And I get that, and we've got solid numbers for the numbers that are driving it. So if there are minor changes to the others, it's probably not gonna matter. I guess the only thing that I'd be curious about is that if any of the 4 municipalities that haven't responded have build-out analysis for their municipalities and just to, try and get that information and see if it verifies the numbers that we're seeing or if there's a possibility that there might be change.
We can certainly inquire again. We sent out numerous follow-ups and we did not hear
There
from
was some
folks.
follow-up from this
So,
meeting as well.
right.
Okay, Legislative Benelli.
Well, in speaking of this, I will tell you, the village of South Monroe, I can't see that these numbers are correct, because this is speaking to exactly what you're talking about. There's the potential for zoning, I'm not saying that there is, but, and that speaks to your question and your concern as well. I would like to see us try to get some, I don't know that they have it as of yet.
Does it say
They
that
are
they
in
get,
you.
do they even know?
That's gonna mean they don't even know, but I think that it is worthy to have a dialogue with them as to the importance of them sitting down and giving us, because they are developing.
Yeah. In fact, we actually specifically talked about something.
Yes, I mean, all you have to
Yeah.
do is drive down
Yeah.
Route 208 and you will see that, but it's not all residential either.
Correct.
So all of the anomalies you're talking about perfectly fits the line.
We would be happy if anyone here, I mean, you guys represent these folks, if you could
I will make that.
make some, we'd be happy to either meet with them in person or do
I
a
will
Zoom
make
call or
that.
however, we would, more information is better, we would love to receive it.
I will do that. And then my other question is, the town of, because it's my understanding that most of the Harriman sewer treatment plant, and this is part of the movement communities, is really the village of South Monroe, really not the town. Is there that, is there anything in the town?
Just very little, if anything.
Right.
I think the only
So I
property
think those
was,
numbers may even be high. as far as-
Yeah, and that would make sense because it's based on a census block, which doesn't coincide with the sewer
Of
service
course it
areas.
does.
So again, we don't have, in that, especially in that case, data specific to the sewer service area.
I think there's just a minimal. if any,
Well, we were
of
wondering
movement
about
over.
this sort of, the space between the southern end of the village before you get to Museum Village Road.
Camp
is
Camp
in
Concordia
town.
is in the town of Blooming Grove. It's
Yes,
a portion.
and
That's
that's,
just a small portion of
Right.
the Camp Concordia property.
right,
There is some town developable property in the town of Blooming Grove.
So that's why we included an estimate, while they may not be there today,
so it's all
seems
out
reasonable
by
and
the Camp Concordia area.
Yes, that's,
Then that
anything
makes
that, anything
sense.
that had been tied in.
Then that
is-
makes
is-
sense.
Is in that
Okay.
area there.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But the village of South Monroe, these numbers may not be.
we would love to get additional information. One of the things we did at the very beginning was go on everybody's website, because a lot of times folks will have comprehensive plans, or they may have other materials that are helpful. We didn't find those things for these communities, so, we inquired, but we'd love to have more information, and this can obviously, it's math, so it can be changed. It's pretty.
Well, we have two people from,
Yeah,
town.
Pete, is this the form you asked me to fill out?
I thought you said you sent it back.
Yeah, I sent it back and our comprehensive plan is online. It's on our website.
Yeah.
The
What do you-
comprehensive plans don't have quite the detail that, the form that we asked for. So as in number of.
We can resend it to you.
Resend it to me, I'll send it back. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Great.
And John, I thought that the mayor sent it also.
He advised me, he did.
For
Town of
Village of-
Woodbury?
Village of
Village of
Monroe.
Monroe.
Oh, Village of Monroe.
I talked to Neil and I don't remember, did he, John, I don't remember where we ended up with that.
Well, I think that's a good idea that,
Yeah.
Katie can work with Village of South Blooming Grove. I'll work with these gentlemen
Mhm.
and we'll try to get them,
That'd be great.
get these so they're not estimates, even though still like looking at crystal balls.
If there's still estimates, better maybe.
But we'll have something that these guys feel comfortable with. Do you guys, looking at these numbers, do they jive with what you have in your head? Do you really have to drill down on it?
No, I think our numbers are low.
Your numbers are low here.
Mhm.
Okay, so why don't we do that? If that's okay, Mary Beth?
Sure,
We'll,
yeah,
we'll
no,
coordinate back
we'd
with
be
them.
happy to, that'd be great. Yeah, one thing, Tony, so Tracy, correct me if I'm wrong, but for town of Monroe, when town of Palm Tree was carved out of the town of Monroe, the population percent change was negative 86 point something percent.
Yeah, it was.
Because the way the census does it, right? The way the census chopped out a chunk of the population. Remember, the census isn't actually looking at a map and saying, oh, Brock lives here and Glenn lives there, and Brock was inside the boundary and Glenn wasn't. They just did some kind of a estimation of what was lost when that new
The
population.
population went from about 38,000 down to about almost 20. I don't know where they got it, minus 86%.
Right, so that would be, it would be really good to get a better understanding, right?
And
Absolutely.
that 20, I'm including both Village of Hammer and Village of Monroe. It's probably 9 and like 2.
Yep,
So
'Cause it's the other-
Still, that would be like 30%.
yeah.
Not 87.
And it was 86 point something.
It was
percent, right?
something
It was
very large.
Very large, it was shockingly large.
Okay, so let's take a look at it. John,
Yeah, Pete, as far as the village of Monroe, we're probably 95%
that,
built out. Some of the, the 400 gallon, that's always been the number that I've heard, 400 gallons a day per unit. The Smith Farm, which is in the village, partially in the village, majority of it's in town.
And
We've been watching their consumptions, and they're averaging about 241 gallons per day per meter. In that development.
for the water meter. So that's coming,
241 a day.
so that's coming in less.
It's coming in less than 400.
Yeah, but
yeah,
So, I mean,
what's
I
the
don't know,
average
I think that
population of the
400
household that you're using, Tracy?
They were, I don't have that part of the table with me, but they varied. They were mostly,
I mean, 'cause it could
2.8,
vary greatly
3.2,
between certain
and then
parts.
KJ was up to 5.9, I believe. So it's different. And I believe that's part of where the 400 unit comes from, is that it's an average, a conglomeration of everyone.
Okay.
because you
So
do have
it's an
some that
average,
are
average, so some
really
are
high,
a lot
yeah.
higher, some.
And again, it's a planning number.
Also, getting back to town of Blooming Grove, there is a portion of town of Blooming Grove that's tied into the county sewer up where the old Zuckerman cottages are. And I don't know if you've been up there lately, but those cottages are not cottages anymore. They're 2- and 3-story housing. And that's in the town of, all in the town of Blooming Grove.
Okay, so why don't we just, we'll circle back and we'll, take a look at it and then, we'll move on then.
May I ask that you send me a digital copy to the office?
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so with that as background, Brock can kind of talk about some of the plans that we've been working on for expanding the Whitford Food Farm.
I got big sets today.
I can do that on what we can.
I'm thinking it's probably easiest. I don't know, it's easiest to you have your own slide or you got
Tell me what it actually is.
Well, so in our last meeting, we talked about, yeah, and I thinking what that says. Last time I was here, I guess our last meeting, we talked about the different options we were looking at for treatment. At the wastewater itself.
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
So, so through that, we talked about, we looked at 4 different options. Our original scope was to look at 4 different options to bring the plant to 9 MGD. Since that time, we've been looking at options as to how to expand, build a facility that can be more than 9 MGD. Of those options, we've identified 2 options that can get us capacity on the Harriman site that go beyond 9 MGD. Those are the membrane bioreactor process and the sequence batch reactor process. What we've looked at since then is the ability to phase these projects in a fashion that we can build a 9 MGD facility today. With the facility with the design master plan to increase it to 12 MGD or hopefully to more. We're working on what that final maximum number is, back and forth a little bit with some suppliers about denitrification rates and cold temperatures and blah, blah, blah. But, but we're gonna be somewhere in that range. So what we've determined is both the SBR process and the MBR process allow us to do just that, build this project in phases. So if you look at these drawing sets that you've got, you'll notice the first sheet shows us option 3A. And what this drawing is showing is installing an MBR process, which is a membrane bioreactor process, in the existing train two basin. That would be good for 7 million gallons a day, maintain train three at 2 million gallons a day, that gives you 9 million gallons a day. We maintain, generally speaking, that area where train one exists remains available, so we go to the next sheet.
Just for everybody, train one's the one in the middle,
Might be easier.
trains, train one's the one in the middle.
So train two oxidation ditch, this is the train one process. So what that allows us to do, and this would gives us seven MGD, and the existing train three gives you 2 MGD. That brings us to that 9 MGD that we're looking for, while leaving space to do more. So if we go to, so now we get to where we've got a 9 million gallon a day treatment facility and we need more flow. We're able to take the area where train one exists today and construct additional membrane bioreactor processes in that area to expand the plant's 12 MGD beyond. Through that phase one process, we would design that process such that like the headworks and all of the areas that are auxiliary and tie into those, into the MBR process, things like that, are designed such that they can accommodate the additional flow. So it's designed in a way that you're not designing for 9, you're gonna tear the headworks out. You're gonna design the headworks to take the 12, such that so everything is considered as we go through it. Your pipe size and things like that are gonna consider how you're gonna expand the plant. So that on the MBR concept works. Then on the SBR concept, again, phase one, we would take where the existing train one exists.
This is the one that says option 4A for those who are following along at home.
So we would demolish the existing train one, and we would build 5 million gallons per day of SBR capacity where train one exists today. We would continue to have your existing train two running at 2 million gallons a day. Train three would continue to be running at 3 million or 2 million gallons a day, giving us 9 million gallons of capacity. Again, all the auxiliary components, you'll notice there's some grayed out areas in this building, things like that. We'd be building everything such that as you expanded, your buildings are big enough that you can just add filters and things like that. So the whole system's designed to be expanded without redoing it, without any rework of the systems that you're building. And to be honest with you, both of these facilities, this is how you would, even if you were to do this project with 12 million gallons at once, you'd still go in this fashion because you got to keep everything. So you build this and then you take this down. So under the SBR options of 12 million gallons a day plus, we would then have, remember, we had 2 million gallons, 4 million, 5 million gallons, and 7. We would go demolish this existing train two and construct, we duplicate and create another 5 million gallons of MBR capacity or SBR capacity here. So we have 5 and 5 for 10 plus 2. But for train three is giving us 12. We've talked about trying to get beyond 12. The challenge we're running into getting beyond 12 right now is that the total nitrogen limits and the denitrification rates that we will see at cold temperatures is really kind of pushing up against that number. So if we had less stringent effluent limits, we could do 4. So we're going to be in that 12 range. I don't see us getting 15. So we're going to see how far we can go. But so those are kind of the two options that are being written up, developed, priced, and installed in that facility plan, in addition to the original 2 options that were in there that'll continue to be in there. But those are the 2 options that are really being hashed out right now.
And then way down the road, after you did this and you had 12, you have the potential or more. You have the potential to, because at some point, train 3 is going to end up in the condition of train 1 and train 2. It will age, right? It's been sitting there aging for the last how many ever years, right? So there will either need to be major capital improvements made to train 3 just to extend its useful life, or you have an opportunity to replicate this type of expansion and add even more capacity to the site, but it does involve, at that point, it would be demolishing train 3, just like we're talking about demolishing the older trains. But again, it kind of gives you that ability down the road, when you're past whatever 12 plus capacity you get here, you have that consideration of saying, okay, now I have this geography. how much more capacity can I get if I put in a different technology over here, just like we're looking at for trains 1 and 2.
So if you did that, you have, train 5, you got 5, 2 in the middle, and then another 5, so that would take you up to 17?
No, so this is all your solids process.
Okay,
here. So
okay.
this is maintained and this is filters.
So it would take you up to
So
15.
this is, when I say 5, this actually will accommodate a lot more, but the main treatment process is this.
Yep.
So
So-
5, 2, 12.
12.
Yeah.
But if you demolish that and did it, you might get up to 15.
You could get.
Way.
Yeah, down.
Yeah. So part of the challenge will be way down the road, what affluent limits will we have? What, technologies will be available, those kinds of things. But this is sort of, the nice thing about this is it leaves you the flexibility to do that. You're not foreclosing some future opportunity to use this geography in a different way. Right now, it's a huge part of your process. It treats a lot of your water. It does a great
They
job.
can still carry debt.
You're right. It's new, it's relatively new, so leave it alone.
Yeah, so what's the life of that? Because as you're presenting, you're saying that eventually, which makes sense, we're gonna have to do something here anyway.
Well, if you think about it, these guys were built in the 70s,
Okay.
Yeah, this was
And this was what?
70s, this was 87, this was 2006.
so you've got some time. Right, but it gives you that flexibility.
And through this process, we are doing some improvements to this. We're not just putting it to the side and ignoring it. There's improvements that are happening in the context of the overall project. The improvements are relatively
So the
minuscule.
capital projects, the longevity projects we've done, does that include anything over there?
Yeah, so that's actually what this would be, is this is the heart of sort of the longevity aspect of this, because we're gonna get rid of a lot of these existing parts. There's no point in investing in them, right? So that's exactly it. You're right.
So, is it a question on this concept and where we're headed on this side of the equation? Because I'm gonna completely
Yeah.
change
Well,
gears for a second.
So, yeah, so I think the next thing to say is this does not obviously treat for total dissolved solids and water.
So if you go to the next page, we are
What if we
working
don't
through
want to go to the next?
This
details of
one's kind of fun, actually.
This one is.
First of all,
Price tag isn't fun.
The price tag is so getting into and to treat the total dissolved solids with the dissolved solids you have today. And achieve the speed limits that are out there. We would need to use, there's some different technologies available. The technology for, relatively speaking, your TS limits, the levels are fairly low. Much less lower than, say, seawater, right? So desal plants and stuff are running these much higher levels of dissolved solids and chlorides than we're seeing at the Harriman wastewater plant. But so the most cost-effective solution, I'm gonna use the term cost-effective loosely, is to go to a reverse osmosis system. So what we would end up doing is we would build a system where we're coming in, I think our design numbers are, worst day, we've got total dissolved solid levels of 1,000 milligrams per liter. We reduce those to 500. And that's on, the permit's on a maximum day basis. So we've got to look at our maximum day flow. So 1,000 gallons or 1,000 milligrams per liter. So what we would do is we would pump off somewhere about 10 million gallons of your max day flow of, say, 18. We get pumped off to essentially another water plant. The reverse osmosis system, we think, oh, we're just going to drop reverse osmosis system, and that needs pre-treatment before we can do that. So we would do an ultrafiltration system, which is essentially a drinking water plant. It'd be a 10 MGD ultrafiltration system that would then go to the reverse osmosis system. The reverse osmosis, I'm gonna start using RO. The RO system, it's taking and you're creating all this pressure, kind of, you're doing the reason it's called reverse osmosis is, the world's trying to get to a constant place. So if you've got high levels of salt on one side of the membrane and low on the other, the water's trying to actually go across to the higher concentrations because it wants the concentrations of salt to be the same on both sides of the membrane. So in the reverse osmosis system, you're taking pumps and you're creating a pressure to make it so the water thinks that there's a bunch of salt on the other side. So it's a big energy user. But what happens is you only get that that area where the salt is, you can only get it so low before the membranes aren't working anymore. So from a design standpoint, you're saying about 25% of the water that goes into the RO system stays on the RO side, on the
dirty-
side
the dirty
that has the salts.
Dirty side.
75% goes through. So we take 75%, 10 million gallons a day, we send that back to the treatment plant, blend it with the water. So now we've got basically about, in this case, I think we'd be like 16 MGD that would be going back into the treatment. We'd be taking on max day, we'd be pulling 2.6 million gallons of brine water, putting it in tanks. So we get it on tanker trucks and haul it away. On an average day, we generate about 300,000 gallons. So what you've got here is we've looked at just a conceptual site. We haven't even gone into trying to site this thing. We would be looking at, interestingly enough, we're working on the Saratoga County Water Authority water plant. We just did a bunch of work and it's about the same size. So it's a 300 by 80-foot building. We've got some 300 horsepower pumps feeding these processes. We figured 2 days of storage on your worst day, so we'd have 5.2 million gallons of tank storage on the site.
Let's just store brine.
That's to store the brine that we've got to haul off with trucks. So we didn't really get into trying to even find a site, but we're looking at a minimum site of 5 acres. Very large energy loads. It'd be very expensive. What we don't show in these site plans that we would have to have is pump station at the site plan to pump it up to this facility. So this is being cooked into that facility plan as well. It'll have pricing, it's gonna be conceptual. Like I said, we weren't necessarily looking to try to find a
We'll
site.
also have the costs of trucking it out.
You're gonna have all of that's being cooked into that report.
This is an important consideration in the variance, obviously, right?
Correct.
So some takeaways from this that I think are really, really important. Your permit is a maximum day permit. So you can't just look at your average. You have to say, I have to be able to do this all the time and meet your limit. Your limit's 500, but engineers never design anything right exactly at that. In order to be in compliance, you actually need to design to be less than 500 under normal conditions, so that if you have that one day that's the anomaly, you still make your permit, right? So that's driving some of this. As Brock said, we're working on the Saratoga County Water Authority drinking water plant, which is up in Saratoga, as far north in Saratoga County as you can get before you get to Warren County. They take water out of the Mohawk, or the Hudson, the Hudson. There are days, if you look at the Hudson when it's chocolate milk, that has to become drinking water. So it's a very sophisticated facility. We're expanding it, right? So when you go there, remarkably, it looks a lot like this. So essentially what we're talking about, in layman's terms, is taking a wastewater treatment plant and adding one of the most sophisticated drinking water technologies on the planet to the back end of it to remove the total dissolved solids and reverse osmosis.
Wow. Yeah, it'd be a neat project.
Yeah, well, find another client, please.
We didn't ride with him. He came here by himself. So, because this has been something, I know we've talked a lot about, we have all said, reverse osmosis doesn't make sense, right? Treating the TES doesn't make sense, but now we're putting flesh on the bone in terms of the details about why it doesn't make sense.
Yes.
Good.
So we'll have energy in there, we'll have the cost of hauling, we'll have capital, there'll be all of the, we need staff to run this place. It's good, it really reverberates all the way through the whole system.
Do we have 5 acres?
Not here, you do not.
No, not on the site,
So you would need to,
So that's another.
Put it on a 5-acre barge in the river.
you would need to look for another location
Para?
in an ideal world.
Parent for 5 acres?
I'm sorry?
The parent, or is that too far across the street?
Well, so that's what we were just gonna say. So ideally, it's not super far away, because if you think about it, you have to pump water from this facility to this one. You're gonna do a bunch of treatment stuff on this facility, then you're gonna take the water that you treated here and send it back over here and blend it in before it goes through.
We did.
The further away it is, the more expensive that gets. The obvious is pipes, right? But also you're pumping. So you need bigger pumps, there's more energy. Yeah. Big pipes.
The backwash, there's all these filters backwash, the RO stuff goes to the grind, but the microfiltration system in front of that that's gonna backwash somewhere about 900 gallons a minute. That's gotta go back to the head of the plant, so we have to incorporate that into the design of the plant, because now we're taking recycling 900 gallons a minute back to it from the plant. So it would be it would be quite a project.
So, for a long time, it's interesting, we were talking about this the other day, for a long time, we've been saying the words, it's kind of nonsense to think about doing this. But now we have, some real facts to say, and here's the reason why we say it's kind of nonsense. If we think about the purpose of environmental laws, right, is to protect public health and the environment for us and for future generations. And, but there is always a balance to be had, because sometimes, the solution is worse than the problem. When we look at something like this, the energy consumption is working, directly against everything that the state of New York is attempting to try to do regarding energy, right? It's completely opposite of what is attempting to be done.
Environment unfriendly.
Very much so, very much so.
So this is your justification for why we need to do.
Put solar panels and windows on top of the tanks.
Yeah, and if you've never, we have pictures of how big these tanks are, because we built tanks this big. They're pretty impressive, they're pretty big. This is a big building, you can't miss it. It's,
But we'd have to acquire land for it.
You would, and like we say, you want it to be somewhere
That's
near this site.
That's part of your
There's
capital.
cost, there's,
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
so there's a lot of complexity, but we did want to run through that just because we've been saying it for a long time. And we really want to put some real deep engineering reasoning and some details behind it. So just so folks remember, this is an alternative in our environmental impact statement because it needs to be, right? Because one of the things that we're proposing to review from an environmental perspective is constructing an expansion to this plant and improving it from a longevity perspective without treating total dissolved solids and chloride, because we've applied for a variance. One of the things we have to look at, a reasonable alternative to say is, well, essentially, what if you don't get the variance? This is the, what if you don't get the variance? We need to look at this as an alternative. So it's in the environmental impact statement, and all of its pieces and parts and pluses and minuses will be in there. And then in addition to that, it will also be part of the response to the notice of incomplete application for the variance.
Talk about circular.
It is, it's all, obviously all connected together. So,
But this will make it so everybody, it's real. People understand what that means when you say that. So I think it's an important exercise.
right, sure,
So the backwash from the ultrafiltration goes back to the head of the plant.
yes.
The brine goes to the tanks, which is out of the reverse osmosis, and the little bit that's left goes out into the regular.
Yeah, so what you'll get about 75%, and you'll get about 75% of your flow that you send to this will end up going through the RO system, ultimately back and blend in with because what doesn't go up there is got 1,000 milligrams per liter, right? So you're basically half the flow that's coming, you're taking flow with no TDS and mixing it in with flow that's got 1,000 milligrams per liter to get to.
So half of the flow of heroin comes here to get treated. And then this flow goes back and gets blended in
Goes
with
back.
the flow that hasn't been treated, because the solution to pollution is dilution. So we'd be diluting that water, right? And then that would mean at your end discharge point.
Well, and it ends up being that you're sending more than half the flow, because your dilution water coming back is only 75% of what you sent up. So you gotta use what you're diluting is what you're getting back. So it ends up being more than half of your flow under those peak day, worst condition, TDS worst conditions go up to this facility. So it becomes a very, very large facility.
And that 1,000 milligrams per liter is actual date. And it's been hit more than once. So it's not, that's not some extreme event out there. It is the peak.
Okay, thanks. This is a lot of info right here. Moving forward. Now, do you want these back?
No.
There you are.
Keep them, okay?
Do you need one, Brock?
Oh, no, I've got one. I had to bring it up to me yesterday. I was thinking about myself.
Yeah, then we got
Since
this.
I'm reading this 10, and you don't know.
Are there any more questions on this or what, Mary?
The only thing I was gonna say in conclusion was just to kind of, to end our part of the presentation, was just to talk briefly about schedule.
Okay.
So the timeline, so when we were here in, I think my last schedule update was the last meeting, we are essentially on that schedule, so just to review for everybody, Brock is working diligently on the final facility plan. We're gonna be sending, there it is. We're gonna be sending drafts to staff to review, and then the idea would be, we would be presenting that to this group in July. Again, that will be a lot of technical things, but it will have costs associated with it and some other things that we haven't talked about, right? Some logistical things. The draft environmental impact statement is continuing along. It is tied in with this facility plan because as you see, there's so much interaction between these things. So the DEIS, we're also targeting that for the July timeframe as well with presentation of the alternatives in July, the DEIS itself in September. And then, the objective is to get through the full secret process by the end of this year. And then in terms of the variance application, as I mentioned, we're hoping to hear back from DEC on the quality assurance project plan in very near future. Once we have that in hand, Tracy will be working with Anthony and coordinating the sampling events, and we'll make that go as fast as we possibly can. Meanwhile, all the other things that we needed for the notice of incomplete application we have in hand really, so it's really just that sampling information that is outstanding. So that's the last thing that we had, was just to update on schedule.
Great, thank you, Mary, but thank you, Brock. If there's nothing else on this, then I think we'll move down to item B. Bob, can you tell us a little update on the sewer meters?
Sure. We expect to have all the specs to general services by Friday.
By Friday.
That's the list. That's,
I can,
go ahead.
actually did send it over today.
Okay,
go
can you
ahead.
just remind everybody about the,
I left the office this morning. This happened between this morning.
okay,
Went over to general services.
and also just refresh everybody's mind about how we're gonna do the labor.
Yeah, the meters, these meters that we're gonna be installing in the locations that were identified in the report, we had initially looked at having a contractor do an installation, which was a full-blown installation of installing new manhole structures and meters. The price came in about 4 or 5 times what we had expected. We put it back out to bid again and reduced some of the things that we were asking, and still the numbers came back astronomically high, much more than what we had allotted for in the capital project, which was about $500,000. We looked at it again, and we're currently using laser technology meters that are fantastic, and they're using the same meters for permanent locations as well. We were waiting for the technology to get it approved by the manufacturer before we would actually utilize it. That has since been done, and we've decided rather than having a contractor do the installation, we can actually get these things built and install them in existing manholes rather than trying to construct new manholes. So we believe the total price of this project will be within the allotted capital project, which is about $500,000.
And these are the new numbers that are going to general services?
Yes, the specifications have been revised for us to do the installations.
Great, it's good, saving some money. 2022, that's amazing.
Great.
Barry Cheney, please.
So how will it work in terms of extracting the data and analyzing the data? Are we going to have that staff do
It's going to be
that?
hosted by the manufacturer.
Oh, it is
of
going
these
to,
units.
okay,
Yes.
great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Anything else on that note? We're just waiting. How long after it gets to general services before it?
Before it goes out to bid, I would say probably about
Long,
3 or 4 weeks, I would think.
Yeah.
That would be normal.
And they've already sent the documentation I need to look at.
Okay, good.
So you've already seen, all right. good.
Great.
So I'll be looking at it ASAP.
All right, and then Bob, about the Village of South Blooming Grove Chester Improvement Project. I know you got an update on that.
Yeah, to summarize, we got
you recall, the company Anu has an oxygenation system at the Chester pump station. We've been working with South Blooming Grove to get a demonstration of the same system at their pump station. That finally happened. Can't remember when it was. We had a 1-week demo period with that installed. That was probably
It was
May-
September.
May
16th.
beginning of May.
Yeah, in the middle of May, they actually ran it for 1 week.
All right. So that was done, and then we wanted to get some baseline information where all treatment was shut off. And all during this time, we're measuring levels of hydrogen sulfide down at Airplane Park and also in the system. So that's been now accomplished. So treatment is back online. The treatment that they had, which was sodium hypochlorite at South Blooming Grove and the existing Anu system in Chester. There are some improvements that need to be made at the system in Chester, so that's in progress.
And then
So we'll have the results of that report, and then we need to visit with South Blooming Grove. Indication are it's going to work pretty good, so.
Yeah, get the report back from Monroe. We'll also include the village of Monroe and the town to, we'll come down and explain the report to them.
And then hopefully towards a project in South Blooming Grove to install these. That's where we're at, basically.
Any questions? Concerns?
But again, this has been somewhat criticized recently, but this has been an ongoing problem for way more than 10 years. So moving towards a solution. I mean, it is pretty obnoxious in Airplane Park.
Yeah.
And we're aware of that.
Okay,
That's what we're trying to solve.
Thanks a lot. All right, I think we're at the end of the agenda. I just want to add one other thing that we're not going to discuss today, but today, some of us received a letter. It seemed optimistic about how we can get some extra help and assistance down in the Harriman wastewater treatment plant. We only received it a few hours ago, so what I'd like to do is that we can, those that got it, and I'll share with the rest of the committee members that may not have been on that, and we can discuss it, digest it, and be prepared to talk about it at the next meeting. But my first look at it seemed it could help. I'll leave it at that. All right, if there's no other, oh, yes.
I
Chairman.
believe at the last meeting we had talked about, and I think that this is something that legislator Amo had brought up. And I believe he spoke to you about it as to what ifs, as far as the legality of things. I mean, we have been at 85% for a while. What if, at this point, we're kind of, are we leaving ourselves open and things like that? We want to discuss that because I know Mr. Amo had a conversation. And should we go into executive session?
Absolutely should go into executive session, and we discuss it again next month. I think it might be better. I know he has specific questions on point
Okay,
that I know, because we spoke after the meeting last time.
so, I mean, do you want to wait? Or
Yeah,
do you want
waiting
to
is
just do
easier.
it brief? It is easier.
Yes.
Okay,
So we'll
Then I
carry that
will
over
that.
to next month.
okay, that's fine.
Okay, sounds good, and nobody has anything else, so take a motion to adjourn.
Can we just confirm the next meeting's date?
Oh, yeah,
That would be great.
You want to do it on another rules day?
yeah,
That would be the 20th.
how you gonna vote that in already? Old-fashioned stuff.
So I have the 13th.
So that's
did-
why
I
I
did
wanted,
too.
yeah, I had the 13th, that's why I wanted to ask.
Yeah, committee start the week of the 18th, so it would be on Wednesday.
Yeah, it's the 20th, I think, right?
Yeah, but last time we said 13.
For some reason, we all scheduled calendar the 13th.
Would we, since you're gonna be giving some more definitive, hitting deadlines and stuff, would that extra week help you out?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
Mostly on him, so.
was the issue that on the 20th, the physical services, because this needs to be brought to, seeker needs to be brought to physical
Okay.
services.
That could have
And,
been.
and so physical
That's what-
services,
That's what it
agenda goes to bed.
Although we wouldn't
On
have we
Wednesday.
wouldn't have the document to go to,
Physical.
physical, this would just be a presentation in advance of that, so.
But I thought we wanted to have, physical approve the preferred. Oh, that's for August.
Yeah, I think that's
Review,
for
to
August.
approve the preferred alternative at the August legislative session, which means that would have to be
We can.
on the agenda on the 20th for physical on the 26th or 5th, thank you.
Physical, I think, is in August.
20, no, in
July,
July.
it's the 25th.
Because the goal that I wrote down was that the preferred alternative would be approved at the August legislative session. So do we need to discuss that on the 13th or?
I spoke with Rick about the procedure. I had mentioned last time that I was going to look into what the procedure was with regard to moving forward, specifically with regard to the legislature. And obviously, the facility plan is going to be provided in July. And the legislature can make inquiries about an alternative that, they wish to see additional information on, or if there's questions. But if we go into and we decide a preferred alternative, that may be looked at as an approval, or which we cannot do with regard because of seeker. So what we can do is provide the documentation and cut out that step.
What's that?
The
Approval of,
the approval of any preferred alternative.
so that wouldn't occur until we actually dealt with seeker.
Yes,
and
sir.
the preferred alternative was included in that
Right.
documentation.
And it could be that after seeker, that the legislature decides, we'll choose one of them, we'll choose one of the alternatives with regard to how to proceed. And all of which those alternatives will be addressed in the seeker documentation.
It would seem to me that it might be doing too much and holding it off until one big decision that may end up going back and having a lot of discussion about the preferred alternative.
Yeah, I'm not saying not.
Which is why I thought the two-step seemed to be a good idea, understanding that it doesn't have to be, but it just seems like as we're moving along through this process, keeping the legislature knowledgeable and accepting of the process and the decisions, may be easier than just throwing everything at them at once.
Right, and that was not my intent. I'm sorry,
No,
I wasn't clear.
Yeah.
The documentation, or in whatever form, electronic or otherwise, and should be provided to the legislature. So that
Okay,
they
all
can
right.
begin,
So-
evaluating, come up with the questions that they want asked for the DEIS.
So at the July 25th meeting of physical, would that lend itself to having a presentation about the alternatives?
We will do whatever you guys need. We just want to make sure we have it on our calendars so that we're targeted.
Chairwoman.
I think that we need to have a conversation as far as that is concerned. Because we set up this committee to be a task force for all of this. And my vision, and I think it was the original vision, is that we would do the heavy lifting and ultimately we would review the alternatives 1 through 5, 1 through whatever, and we would make a recommendation to physical. Not excluding it, giving them any background, but at the end of the day, if there's 3 options and this group, because the legislators that sit on this committee, this is a special district. We all represent that special district. The other legislators do not. So we would look at the 3 options, say there's 3 options, and then we would recommend option number, whatever, to the committee. They may ask a lot of questions, but at the end of the day, the people that have spent a year and a half or however we've been doing this, this is what we're recommending. So I'm not saying don't give them all the information, but I think at the end of the day, we want to be able to get a recommendation out of this group.
And so when would we be prepared to do that? I guess I'm not clear on that. Is that something that would be July 20th or?
I think what it is the presentation of the facility plan to this committee. And this committee's evaluation and preparation of a recommendation. And I think that your intent was to provide that recommendation with the facility plan to the member, to the facility, to physical services. If I'm
That
interpreting
is,
correctly. So you may be looking at this presentation in August.
The only other thing
And
I-
really the only thing, I'm sorry, the only thing that we need to have as part of the timetable is the seeker. Because you're saying that Rick said that we don't really need to approve the facility plan ahead of seeker, and we can, right?
Exactly.
So the only thing that I think I'll add, and Brock, you should chime in terms of the alternatives, you know, we've been having a lot of discussion about what those alternatives are, but I think we're really pretty close to settled on. You know, there may be some subtle changes and some little technical things, but the big picture technologies, what do they look like? Those things are pretty much, you've seen them twice. I think what really is gonna come to you in July that you have not had is what this stuff costs, right? So that will, I think, you know, so we're gonna talk about what are the costs, what are these kinds of things, but I think then logically, the next question after we talk about what do things cost is to say, and what is the impact to the users?
how is
So,
it going to be proportioned out?
right, so it
Which is a
seems,
huge issue.
it seems like we kind of
Governance issue
have,
again.
you know, maybe just thinking about this because we do lots of these, right? So a lot of times it makes sense to have there be a discussion about these are the capital costs and these are the operating costs. And then from our perspective, we don't live here, we're not elected officials, and we do not pay taxes here. But we can talk about it from our experience base in terms of the costs, the benefits, the drawbacks to the different approaches. And we can present that in July to you. Because sometimes, you know, some people, you may see a number and you go, but then when we talk about what that number means relative to, say, the operating costs associated with it, or its longevity, when could you expect to spend more money on this animal that you're building? Those kinds of things. So you guys will need, my opinion, some time to absorb that portion of this discussion. And then there is that separate consideration of, and the whole, how, you know, how does it get paid for and those kinds of things? Because again, in terms of the alternatives, we're giving you alternatives to upgrade to 9 now. All of them open the door to upgrade to larger later, some number. I know we're having some debates about what that number is, but it's kind of academic at this point, right? We'll give you numbers, cost numbers for both of those things. Knowing that that larger thing is out there sometime in the future with, we're gonna project it today's costs.
Yep.
But it'll be some other cost when you do it, right? But it's a relative kind of discussion. You need to be eyes wide open about this. We'll talk about the operating costs. You guys will no doubt have questions. We'll run through those things. But then that next conversation is how does that now translate after you've had some time to absorb it into the practical implications of this? 'Cause to your point about making decisions, when you get to that point, you need this information. That's our job, is to give you this information for consideration. So it seems to me like it's a two-step process.
I would be hesitant to be, I would be hesitant to commit to us presenting the report on the 13th. So you guys are committed to going somewhere by the 20th.
You're gonna
Right,
need some time.
that's, I guess.
Yeah, well,
that's what
and
I'm
it seems
doing.
we have it because the intent relative to the seeker is September, right?
Right, and that's the reason why that schedule was set up, was because in consideration of this, if we're telling you how much things, we've told you the technologies. Now with some more flesh on the bone, we're gonna tell you the costs in July, then we need to probably have that next conversation about, so what does this all mean? Right, and then September is, so that's the reason it was sequenced that way.
So we'll talk about it, maybe August physical, just to have a
Well, we
presentation to
also have to
update
remember,
on the
we want to know the
technology.
respective offices as well.
And just from our perspective, we understand there's a lot more people involved in this than the people in this room. We are available to you in any way you need. So if you need presentations, if you want packets of information, if you want meetings, whatever it is that you need, let us know and we'll make it happen. So whatever level.
Just if I could add a couple of things here. Number one, you need to factor in EF&S, having this and reviewing it and getting it back, getting
Yes.
our feelings on this, you know, our input back.
It should pass through us,
Yeah.
and we should want to recommend it to you guys to take a look at it first.
Absolutely.
That could take, you know, depending on when we get it,
Yeah.
with that, how
It
long.
seems like this is a pretty fast procedure.
Yeah.
When you figure that step needs to be,
It almost
needs
seems
to
like it
happen.
should be a month.
Yeah. Then, and Mary Beth, let's speak to the big time frame here. At some point, the way I see things, the legislature needs to deem the DEIS complete,
Correct,
right? That's the goal. And at that point, there's a public hearing scheduled.
correct.
The comments received at that public hearing, and then the answers to that form the final EIS,
Right,
right?
Correct.
So keep that, I wanted to say that out loud so
Correct.
everybody understands.
that's why
We're
we're
not,
talking
we're not
about
at the end here.
end of
you
the
know,
year, right?
And
That's
no,
what we're
and
actually
no
saying.
decisions can be made until that FEIS is done and there's a findings. Then after the FEIS, there's generally a finding statement and that closes secret. So there's a number of steps.
And that is why we're saying it's like December.
Yeah, I'm
When
not
it's
sure
actually
everybody, you know,
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah, exactly.
a lot of you guys have been involved in this stuff, but
So Barry, you're
doesn't
okay?
hurt to review it, okay?
Okay, thanks, Bob.
Yeah.
So if we kept the Zoom meeting on the 20th, that's okay for you, Barry, and that would be better for you guys?
Well, yeah, I mean, because it looks like we're not going to project a presentation on the 25th,
On the
so.
25th, okay. So why don't we keep that sewer meeting for the afternoon of Wednesday, July 20th at 1:30? And look forward from there.
Great.
Everybody's agreement?
That's the same day as Wilshire.
They all are, yeah. We always have it, so Thursday, third Wednesday. And speaking of rules, they're up in 45 minutes, so I'm sure you have some things to do, Katie, but we're at the end of our agenda.
It's fine.
We're at the end of our agenda, so if there's nothing else, then take a motion to adjourn.
So,
Second.
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, Rob.
everybody.
You guys need wallpaper?
So how do you print the blue binders, the drawings now? When